What's going on, y'all? How are you? This is Dallas Software Developers Meetup. Thank you so much for being out here with us. You could be anywhere in Dallas right now. You decided to hang out with us. It means a lot to me. Hopefully, I'm going to honor that luxury of you being here with us, right? So, a couple things we're going to be going over before I kind of get into everything. Got a couple housekeeping items, couple call to actions, and all that good stuff. And then hopefully after that, we'll get into the breadth of the talk. Just out of curiosity, raise your hand. Is this like your first DSD meetup? Y'all gonna be spoiled. You're not gonna want to go to another meetup after this. It's just gonna be DSD forever. I'm just letting y'all know. Online, I know we have a very packed house. In here, thankfully, there are a lot of audibles that went through today, but we're still able to make this happen. So big shout out to our first sponsor of the night, Yum Brands, for giving us the space, please. Big shout out to them. For those that don't know, Yum Brands is the parent company of some of our favorite brands like Pizza Hut, KFC, Taco Bell. And so they're all under one house. We've had developers, meet and make connections through this meetup as well. So always be networking, talking, having good conversations. Second big shout out of the night is the reason why we have the pizza, Appright. So big shout out to Appright, please. Thank you. We've gone over budget way too many times and they've never stopped me. So big shout out to them there. I know I kind of make them mad a little bit. Appright, for those that don't know, is a backend as a service tool. You can use it for authentication. You can make user sign-up forms with it, like a couple lines of code. Databases, functions, template functions, you name it, they've got it. Check them out. Open source as well. They're free tier, very generous. Highly recommend it. We've actually had people in the Discord kind of talk about that, which brings me to call out number 3. If you're not in the Discord, highly recommend joining it. If you go to dthompsondev.com, you can find a link to the Commit Your Code Discord. That is where we have all of our chats. And if you're in the Dallas area specifically, just add the role to yourself that you're in Dallas, and you'll see Dallas-specific chats as well that aren't open to everyone else. It's a great way to network, meet the community, hang out, and all that good stuff. All right, so I know we had quite a few people raise their hands for this being their first meetup. My question now is, of those people, do y'all know who I am? Outside of it, like just the person standing in the front? Nobody. Okay, cool. I like that. All right. So I'll give a little spiel into who I am before I kind of dig in deeper. We have a lot to cover, to be honest, and we don't have a lot of time because I don't really like having super long meetups. I will say, if you are actively in the search of trying to find a job, whether it's your first job in tech or your next job in tech, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm going to be sharing a lot of valuable information. I've condensed this. This is, and for those that don't know, I've helped thousands of people land their first jobs in tech or other jobs in tech. I don't think anyone on the internet probably has the track record that I have so far. And I've got the screenshots to prove it. Like all the messages. I originally had the idea of just having screenshots play behind me, but the audibles of the room changing kind of threw everything out of sync. Regardless, I'm very, I've got this down to a science for the most part. So we're going to be covering quite a bit. Take notes. Because the other thing too is, honestly, I know I'm going to be going a little fast. You can always ask follow-up questions in the Discord afterwards when we're networking and whatnot, but it's going to be fast-paced. Take those notes and then you ask those questions. Actively take notes as we're talking, okay? We're going to be doing something that I call chapters, right? And so we roughly have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 chapters that we're going to be going over, right? Some I'm going to probably combine for the sake of time, but regardless, we're going to be covering everything from how do you get noticed for your first job in tech, or other jobs. Honestly, I'm going to say first job often, but this is going to apply no matter what level you're at, because I've helped everybody from interns and junior developers landing their first job to upper management at this point. So, and all over the world. So it's going to apply no matter where you are. But a lot of the advice, I will have some things that are specific simply for Dallas because that's who's in the room. So for those online, I apologize. Just whatever you hear, and this goes for the room as well, don't just take what I say for this is the way, right? Allow it to spark some ideas in you and research it. And if it applies, use it. If it doesn't, throw it to the side and pivot to where you need it to be, as long as you get that opportunity. So a little about me for those that don't know who I am. My name is Dennis Garcia, and Dennis is one of the other admins here. I'm Danny Thompson. I am the director of technology at a company called This.Labs. This.Labs, which is actually a very recent role for the most part. I think it's been 5 weeks. I haven't gotten fired yet, so that's a good sign. I think I'm doing an all right job. And my beginnings, I fried chicken in gas stations for most of my life. over 11 years. I learned how to code and everything changed. If it wasn't for some of the most amazing people that I've met in my life, meetups, communities, and I often tell people that my entire life I was told, Danny, when you get older, you need to work for that construction company. It's a union construction company. They've got great benefits. That's where you need to be. Or Danny, you need to work for the city bus company because they've got great benefits. You'll be set for life. And there's nothing wrong with those jobs, right? But the reality is when that's your ceiling, how do you see past that? When the highest influences around you, your family, your parents, your loved ones, your friends, they tell you that's the highest level you could reach. No one where I lived ever talked about being a doctor, lawyer, developer. That never entered the conversation. And so if that's my highest level aspiration, I can't see past that. And it took years before I was ever able to see past that. And so my hope with a lot of what I do, I speak at colleges, high schools, junior high schools, corporate America, you name it, I'm there. A big portion of it is just letting people know that they're allowed to be in this industry and you're allowed to thrive. The reality is a lot of people just don't know what those steps look like. And so for me, I remember as I was learning how to code, and you can kind of, I'm going to skip a lot, but if you ever want to hear the full story, just Google me. I hate saying it like that, but just Google me. You'll find God knows how many podcast episodes out there at this point, but you'll find a lot of information there. But I remember going to meetups, and as I was going to meetups, I would hear a lot of people ask the same question that I ask, right? Like, I'm learning how to code. I want to get a job. How do you get that first job in tech? And every single time I heard the exact same answer. Oh man, getting that first job, that's the hardest one. But if you get that first job, every job after that's gonna become easier. Now, for me, that is like the worst thing you could ever say to me because you're now making me question the thing that I've spent the last 6 months of my life doing. You've given me zero action items. I have no way to get from A to B, from X to Y. There's no steps for me to take. And so because of that, I started realizing everyone that's a beginner that's going to these meetups, asking that same question, are getting that same answer, and they have no clue with what to do with this information or how to go about it or how to navigate it. And so that's when I started studying the process and I started learning and I started networking and I started asking questions and I started interviewing more and I started bombing interviewing like a boss and I started killing some interviews and making some friends and networking. And I ended up turning down 6 jobs in tech before I accepted my very first position. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm very stubborn. And so I had a very clear vision of what I wanted. And since I was already depressed at the gas station, I didn't want to trade one depression for another. And so I ended up saying, if I'm going to switch, let me just be picky and find exactly what I deem to be success for this position. And I'm very grateful that I did that because I truly believe it launched the entirety of my career. It was the reason why I ended up at Google for a short period of time. It's the reason why I ended up at several Fortune 500 billion-dollar organizations. It's the reason why I thrived at AutoZone. It's the reason why I'm thriving now as director of technology at Distal Labs. So we're going to talk about that. So what are the chapter number 1 that we're going to be going over is titled technical skills, right? And the reality is, in order to get a job in tech, you must have what? Thank you, one guy. Technical skills. You got to have the technical skills. There's no way around it. A lot of people, they come to me and they're saying, Danny, how to get the job in tech? I've been learning how to code. Here's the thing. Everyone is learning how to code every single day of the week, right? You have people that are learning for the first time, they get discouraged, they give it up, but you have people that have been learning for years, right? Everyone's learning how to code. And so what you need to be asking yourself is, what is your differentiator and how are you leveling up to the level of being hireable? And the reason why I say in this framing is anyone can walk into an interview and anyone can bomb it, right? And I can tell you right now, we just opened up a position recently, and we had like 900 applicants by the end of the first day. And I could tell you probably 1% were probably worth having a conversation with because they're not giving me information to go off of. They're not giving me things that I can jump on and get excited about to talk to them with. And so we're going to cover a couple of those strategies later on. So just be ready for those points when we get to it. But I want to reference, I do one-on-one calls. And I don't really like doing that, but I have it there because honestly, truth be told, I never did one-on-one calls before. And then somebody created a fake profile of me and scammed a whole bunch of folks. And that's the reason why I do them now, to be honest with you. But I was doing a one-on-one call recently, and I won't say the person's name or describe who they are or whatever, but this call stuck out with me, and I actually referenced it in a talk that I did very recently. And this person has been a junior developer in tech for 2.5 years, and they are now on the chopping block at their company. And the reason why is their lead engineer came to them and said, look, you're asking questions that I would already assume you to know, which is very worrying to me. And so I'm giving you a task now. This task is basically going to tell me whether we keep you for the long run or not, right? That's a scary moment, right? And so they were given this task on a Friday, right? We're having this one-on-one call Monday night, and they're set to have a meeting with their lead engineer on Tuesday morning, right? Crazy timeline, right? Now, just out of curiosity, and no one needs to raise their hand, just scream it out. If you were given this task on Friday night, and we're having this one-on-one call Monday night, I mean, you're given this task Friday morning, we're having this call Monday night, what would you be doing this whole time period? Give me some answers, give me some ideas. Working your ass off, I like that one. Creating a backup plan, I like that one a lot, actually. Anybody else? Applying to other jobs and getting ready was definitely like, that would be a side quest for me there too. I'm not even gonna lie. If I know I'm on the chopping block, yeah, that's gonna be something that I'm paying attention to. One thing further is making sure I'm on top of that task. Or as Will said here, working my ass off, right? We get on that call Monday night, and they have only done in that time period a flow chart to show where the data is going. Now, I know everyone works at different speeds and different levels, but a flow chart, even at the highest levels, is taking you what, 2 hours? You were told Friday morning that your job is on the line, and Monday night you've only done that. I'm not one that would ever advocate for like you killing yourself and working 100-hour weeks and this and that. I did that for years. I don't advocate for that. But if someone told me my job is on the line, I would be working nonstop until that meeting just to make sure I've got everything the way it needs to look to make sure like I'm at that company, right? Unfortunately, this person didn't have it. And they said they were intimidated by a lot of the code. Well, this is where technical skill comes in. And so for me, if you're intimidated by the code and you're not doing anything about it, you're not being proactive, how are you going to get far? So what do you expect is going to happen in this meeting on Tuesday morning? I was nervous about this. So I didn't really approach it, even though I had 5 business days. Now, this person told me that they're making $85,000 a year. Rough math, they're making like $220 a day, give or take, right? So from Friday until Tuesday morning, that's 5 business days. They're making over $1,000 roughly with nothing done. What does the company start looking at that? How do they view that? Where's the value add? Why are they paying you this? So technical skills really comes in handy. So one piece of advice that I'll give you, and I give this to my interns, I give it to my juniors, hell, I give it to some seniors because sometimes they act like it. But when you're going through the code, every few lines, start making what I call pseudo comments, which are like slash, and then you can write a comment and explain to yourself what that code is doing. Now, you're not going to commit this to the code base. You're not pushing this up. At the end of whatever task that you're doing, copy those comments into a Google Doc. You've got entire documentation explaining what this component is doing for you, especially written in terms that you understand. And then slowly and progressively, you will get further. Yes. Well, no. Rubber ducking is if you're stuck on a problem and you're explaining it to the duck because you don't want to bother somebody. But this is like a form of basic level documentation. So you're documenting your code. And so here, if you do that process over time, especially we're talking about the course of 3 months, 6 months, how much documentation do you think you're going to have on that code base? The unknown parts will now be very visible. Step number 2, especially in and this is going to kind of come in further later on down in this talk, but step number 2, I'm a very big believer in doing something that I call follow the rabbit hole. So if you're working on a task in a company, one thing that you could be doing is, let's say that they give you a simple task of like fixing a button on the homepage. A lot of juniors, a lot of interns will be like, I need to get this done fast. They go fix that button, they submit the PR or MR, depending on what platform you're using, and you're like ready to get a code review in, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But what if you took an extra hour and said, when I hit this button, it's doing something. What is it doing? And you start following it. Maybe you're going through areas like, what's middleware? I've never been familiar with that term. What is it doing on the back end? How's it getting to the database? Now, in that 1 hour, you're getting some knowledge. Over the course of 6 months, you're introduced to all areas of the code base, even areas you may not necessarily touch. That follow the rabbit hole pays dividends in the long run. So, and we're going to kind of dig in more into that, but you have to have the technical skills. So don't think just because you learned some tips today, that's going to negate or skip having technical skills for your role. There's no way to do that. There's no point of getting an interview if you can't pass the interview. There's no point of going into technical examination for your skills, depending on the company, or a whiteboard exam, if you can't pass it. You got to have that. So everything that we're doing today is to supplement these technical skills. You had your hand up. You want to say something? All right. Chapter number two. This is a big one. Everyone in this room, I've experienced this firsthand in Dallas specifically, among other areas. This is probably one of the most important chapters, especially if you're a junior dev trying to land your first job in tech. Maybe you've been even learning the code for a little while. How many of y'all picked your tech stack because either a YouTuber told you, your coding bootcamp told you, your college told you? What is your tech stack? C sharp. What about you? Me? Okay. And who else had their hand up? You. What are you? Python. What about you? Next.js. Okay. So of the people that I just asked, including you, how hard has it been trying to get a job? Go ahead. That's fine. Okay. Okay. So now going to the question, how hard has it been for you to get a job? Quite hard. Very hard. I'll get into that in a second though. But what about you? Very hard, right? Now my question is, before choosing these tech stacks, how many of y'all did chapter number two researching the market? Nobody. Let me explain why this is such a big deal. I remember when I first moved to Dallas, it's been a little over 2 years now. And when I first came here, I was meeting a bunch of students from a great cohort group. I won't say the name. I love the group. And they were all saying, I'm trying to get a job in tech. They all have the MERN stack. They all have JavaScript, 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 all that good stuff, right? Well, I said, that's interesting because Dallas doesn't really strike me as a node kind of place, right? And when I started doing research, when I moved to Dallas, I came from Memphis, Tennessee. And in Memphis, uh, we're not a tech town. I'll be honest. We do barbecue. We don't really do tech. There's some tech jobs, but the reality is, it's more enterprise level stuff. And so in Memphis, for example, if you know C#.net, you're job security for life. Simple as that. Like every single organization over there uses C#.net. Uh, I chose Java because I'm dumb, but I chose Java and I ended up getting me a job in tech. But the reality was, I saw something in the market when it came to Java over there that led me to that decision. When I came to Dallas, here are some of the ways that I researched the market. Number one, I checked the job boards, right? I'm going through all the job boards, the Indeeds, the Monsters, eHarmony, whatever. If they got a job on there, I'm there, right? And so I was checking all the job boards to see what is it that they're offering? What are they looking for? What are some of the core technologies that they're in their job ads? And I would do something else. Now, this is the one every single time I'm on a one-on-one call with somebody, and no matter what city in the world they live in, we do this. I will open up Indeed, LinkedIn, whatever, and I literally type in Java, JavaScript, React, Node. How many opportunities pop up with that in their job descriptions? And when I did that, I saw so many heads shake there. It, I don't know why people never tried this before, but when I was having the conversation with the group when I first came, they were all with MERN, MERN, MERN. And at that time, I haven't checked this in a little while, but at that time, there were 290 jobs in the DFW area that required or utilized Node, right? There were 35,000 that used Java. 35,000. So do I want to compete against a very large city of developers for 290 jobs, or do I want to pivot and go where the 35,000 are, where there's way less competition, there's more opportunities? The other thing with Java is a lot of enterprise level organizations, they have systems in place. Now, I'm not telling you need to do Java. I'm telling you need to do research to decide what it is that you're going to get your job into tech with. I will say though, from firsthand experience, Java is definitely in demand in the city. You can't go wrong with it. Especially when we did some studies within our Discord, we found, I believe, Java close to the next second highest language. At that time, it could change now. This is a couple months, but at the time, I think it was 8 to 1. And then when it comes to Node, that's like 30,000 to 1. right? So it's definitely worth researching the market to decide what it is that your tech stack's going to be. Yes. How do you approach that if you're only remote? Your biggest edge is to be a developer in the city that you are. Once you take yourself out of that scenario, you are now competing with the entire global marketplace. You are no longer an edge or a value add because you're not in that market. So you have to remember that once you remove yourself from that market, you're not competing with everybody in America, North America, Asia, Europe, Africa. It's a global competition at that point. And a lot is required to stand out in that process. I'm not going to say it's impossible. Nothing's impossible, but I am going to say you definitely increase the difficulty levels quite a few bits when you do that. Um, Now, for those that don't know, I've done a couple courses. One of them is with LinkedIn Learning. That they flew me out. We did it on their platform, but it's completely for free. It's not behind a paywall. And I was privy to, and I was able to access a lot of data that the public doesn't get to see because of that partnership. And one of the things that we were able to find out and see was 71% of the time where people land into interview number one, you know how they get there? By way of referral. That means if 29 people are going for a job interview number one, 21 got in that room because someone referred them in there. Only 8 of them got in there because of cold applying. So it's something really important to pay attention to as we go into, because a future chapter coming up is going to be networking. 71% of the time came by way of referral. So that referral isn't going to come to you because you're like, I need a job. Please, can you even job? This is what I got. No one's going to respond to that. I wouldn't respond to that. So if you want to respond to that yourself, why are you doing that to others? You got to treat people like people. So great ways of networking in that respect is going to be meetups, places like that, events, conferences, online events as well. Like you can network effectively there. But just doing like follow me without a reason, you're forgotten instantly. I've done the game where I will send random connections to people on LinkedIn when I DM them like, who are you? They don't. Some people just accept to accept, right? They don't really pay attention, especially after a day. So if you don't incentivize them to remember who you are before you introduce yourself, you're forgotten pretty much as soon as you walk away. So when it comes to this chapter of researching the market, how do you research it? Meetups are a great way to research it. Talking to recruiters, talking to hiring managers, talking to other developers. If I was looking for a job, I would go to another developer. Like if you hit the market today, what would be your tech stack that you try to get employed by? Simple as that. Regardless of their level, if you had to hit the market today, where do you think your opportunities would be? You're probably going to hear a variety of answers, but I have a feeling you're going to hear a very common denominator amongst them. That could be an indication. The job boards are going to be another one that you want to start hitting up and researching and looking at. The other one, honestly, and this is very underutilized. If you're trying to, and I'm glad I just thought about this. I didn't include this in my original talk, but it's actually very valuable. If you're trying to get your very first job in tech, more than likely, you're searching for jobs in the wrong way. For a lot of people, they search junior developer, software developer one, software developer two. How many juniors in here have done that? Yeah. It's not your fault. It's kind of what you've been told by people that don't know any better. It's not their fault either. It's just what they've been told. The vast majority. So let me put it to you like this. When you go to that job board and you're searching that job, how many of y'all had entered your credit card information into that job board? Nobody, right? None. Because you're not the thing these companies are monetizing. Companies pay to post those job listings on that job board. How many companies really need to advertise a junior dev role? They know it's going to get thousands of applicants barely trying, right? So companies do two things when they need to hire a junior dev. First thing they do, the manager, 99% of the time, is going to their team, hey, we're about to open up a junior dev role. Do you know anybody I should pay attention to? You know anybody that's interesting that I can interview? That happens literally 99% of the time. I can tell you right now, almost every junior dev that I've ever had work on my teams, anywhere that I've worked, have come through those conversations. The second thing that they do is they post a job on their company career page because it doesn't cost them anything. And there's a bulk of opportunities on these individual company career pages. Sure, it takes effort to go to them all, but here's the thing. Companies know when they post it on their company career page, they sacrifice a lot of visibility. They know the number of applications that they get will drop dramatically, and they're okay with that because they know whoever's gotten to this application didn't mass spam LinkedIn easy apply. They know that this wasn't somebody who just randomly clicked on something and they're going to forget the company name as soon as they finish applying. So they're okay with that, which is better for you, by the way, because you have way less competition going into a role compared to everyone on LinkedIn and wherever else, right? That's how they're applying for looking for junior developers. So if you're only searching job boards, you're probably discouraged because like where are all the junior dev jobs? A vast majority of them they don't want to pay to post it. So networking is going to be a big key, and the company career pages are going to be a big key. The other thing that I would do, honestly, and we'll kind of get into this because the next chapter is LinkedIn. You need to have a very strong LinkedIn profile. Um, I never thought I'd become like the LinkedIn guy, but I've never seen so many software developers underutilize the tool. Now I know, let's just be real. LinkedIn can be cringy at times. Like, let's just kind of be real, right? Like I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, right? Let's see, does this work now? Hey, we're back. All right. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. There are times where LinkedIn can be very cringy. Um, it's a tool. You don't need to be in love with it. You don't need to be like, I'm going to build my social media audience here. Use it for the tool that it is. And the biggest default or the biggest defect, I would say, in a lot of people's approach to networking is once they have a job, they let that network die. They're like, I'm good. And then when tragedy happens or a bad moment happens 2, 3 years down the road, they're trying to tap back into that network and they're like, who is this person? Like, I don't remember you. Why would I advocate for you at my company? I don't know anything about you anymore. You need to nurture your network so it's there for you when you don't need it and when you do need it, right? I can tell you right now, almost every single job opportunity I've gotten in this industry, I've never applied for. Actually, even for this job, I had to fill out the application to start on the day that I started because they didn't have it on file. And that's actually happened to 2 different companies now I think about it. AutoZone was another one. I didn't apply. I don't apply to jobs. I'm not saying don't apply, by the way. You should apply. But I think once you get to a point where your network knows you and knows what you're about, they're going to constantly produce opportunities for you. You need to actively manage and use LinkedIn. And the reason why, yeah, go ahead. Like I've also hmm 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 Yep. For those online, someone in the audience said that they're building a startup and they've seen people build in public, and that's been a reason why they've reached out to people and hired them or brought opportunities to them. And they've seen other people do the exact same thing. 100%. We're going to talk about that in a bit too. So we're jumping a couple chapters ahead. But I will say you need to actively manage LinkedIn profile for a couple reasons. Number one, if if you were to DM me or I were to DM you on LinkedIn, we don't know each other. What is like some of the first things that you would do? Anybody can call out anything. Call it up. Check the description. Acknowledge. How would you acknowledge? Oh, by replying. Okay. What else? Let's do the tools. Okay. You don't know them. You don't respond. Okay. We'll talk about that in a second. Uh, one. Go ahead. No. If I DM'd you and you didn't know me and you didn't have an opportunity to tell that yet, what would you do first? Do some research. Yep. As he mentioned, checking their tech stack, right? How would you check their tech stack? You would check their profile. An actively managed profile increases your rates of replies to people. So when you're reaching out to the recruiter, the hiring manager, the technical manager, other developers, if your profile is actively managed and it's done correctly, you will start finding more people replying to you in the long run as opposed to ignoring you. A profile with a lack of information is often ignored or ghosted because there's nothing for them to go off of. They don't know if you're authentic. They don't know what you're about. They don't know if you're a fit for whatever it is. They don't even know if they relate to you as another developer. So you're missing out on a lot of opportunities by not having it there. The to the point of not replying if you don't know them, I think that approach is fair. If you're in the opportunity of trying to get other opportunities, you may be missing out on them. But that's a choice that you consciously make. It's just dependent upon who you are. Me, I respond to everybody, and the reason why I love responding to the cold recruiters for 2 reasons. Number one, I've had them actually bring me opportunities down the road because we've all got the message of you're a great fit for X, Y, Z, and I'm not. And so I remember one conversation, this is like 3 years ago, actually, now I think about it. One conversation, the guy was like, Danny, I'm so tired of them messaging me out of the blue with opportunities that don't match who I am. And so he's like, I just went off on a recruiter. I was like, cool, you can do that. It's your prerogative, right? But if you just ended it with, actually, I'm not a fit for XYZ, but I am a fit for ABC. Here's my resume. Keep me on file. I'd love it if you have an opportunity to come your way that I'm a fit for. That is how I got so many interviews for junior dev role in the beginning because of that. Uh, it just happened that way. Recruiters know other recruiters, hiring managers know other hiring managers. The same way software developers know other software developers. People end up hanging out with people in their profession. And so you could become the thing that someone brings up, like, dang, I'm looking up for, even though it's a rare position in the DFW area, I'm looking for a Ruby on Rails developer. He's like, oh, well, I met this guy at a meetup and we talked, and let me go ahead and shoot you his resume. That's how a lot of this happens. So for me, I always say one thing, I'm always open to a good conversation, right? And so if there's a good conversation somewhere, I'm open to it. Let's have it. The other reason why I love responding to the cold DMs, they got to pay for it. If you ignore it, they get the credits back. So I'm like, I'm replying. You're going to pay for my time. So let them lose that credit because otherwise they just get it back and they get to spam somebody else. Hmm? Oh, it's so hard to hear back here because I got these headphones in for the online people. So like sometimes it sounds muffled coming in, so I don't know if I'm missing something. All right. So actively manage LinkedIn, you got to have it. It's one of the strongest tools you can have for networking, especially in a professional capacity. A couple stats to kind of support this. Over 90 million users on LinkedIn in North America alone are hiring managers, decision makers for businesses, or upper management level, right? 90 million, right? They are the decision makers on who gets to sit in these seats. They're the decision makers on what vendors come into their companies, et cetera, et cetera. You need to stand out where they hang out. It's as simple as that. If they are at the gym, I tell you go pick out a workout routine. If they're at the bar, I tell you to grab a drink. If they're at a restaurant, I say it's time to grab dinner. They're on LinkedIn. Make it easier for them to want to have a conversation with you, and you're going to find yourself in more conversations. Especially if your goal is to get a job, get a next opportunity, get a level up somewhere, right? Why not be in front of the people that are deciding who sits where? The other thing is when it comes to LinkedIn in particular, I think it's 65% of users make over $80,000 a year, which equates to people more serious in their careers or established, as opposed to people just trying to break in, right? There's definitely going to be the beginner market, don't get me wrong. But for the vast majority, they are established within their career set. Those are great networking connections. Sometimes when you go on, let's say, Twitter, you don't know who you're talking with, or Facebook, or whatever platform you decide to use. There's so many now, but you can jump on any one of them. You don't really know who you're networking with. That's the only place where these professionals live Monday to Friday, 40 hours a week. They have to use it as a part of their job. So make it advantageous for them to have a conversation with you. The other thing is you can use LinkedIn for research. So we're going to kind of jump into interview strategies in a moment, but just know LinkedIn is a very useful tool when it comes to that. And I'm going to be touching on that in a moment. The other thing, next chapter that we're going to be talking about, meetups, obviously. You're in meetups, right? How many people in here would classify themselves as an introvert? Dang, okay. I'm so glad you felt safe enough to come here and hang out with us. I appreciate that. Um, Meetups are one of the best places for an introvert, in my opinion, and I'll explain why. It's intimidating. I get it, right? It's nerve-wracking to speak to people that you don't know or to sit around people that you don't know, but you get to control your chaos. You get to control your intake. When it's too much, that door is wide open and it's not locked. You can walk away, you can take a breather, you can come back. What I implore people to do, if you haven't started thinking about this, start thinking about it. What can you say about yourself that within 30 seconds, people take an active interest in who you are? What piques their curiosity to ask a question? What is the hook you can present about yourself within that 30 seconds? They're like, I need to find out more about this. Why did he say that? Why did she say this? What's their approach with this? The whole point is to have very great 3-minute conversations with a call to action, right? We're having a great 3-minute conversation. We've never met before. La da da. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's continue talking after this, or whatever it may be. Or like, oh, we're talking about React, and I worked on this project. I'd love for you to check it out. Let me send you the repo link here. So give me your LinkedIn. And I'll send you that repo link. That's also a big purpose and reason why we have such an active Discord. It doesn't serve us a purpose. We don't make money on Discord, obviously. If anything, it's a headache moderating the dang thing. But we have it there because we want to create safe environments and abilities for people to network. We've had people that have made friends, they've hung out. That recently they had the first unofficial DSD hike. Obviously, you could tell I didn't partake, but I mean, they had that. They had a great time. We saw some pictures and all that good stuff. So, like, you get things like that, or the Korean barbecue outing that they went to the other night. I love seeing people make relationships and friends and continue with it. It doesn't benefit me, to be honest. Half the time we're losing money doing these meetups, but we do it for the community, right? So go to the meetups, make conversations, talk to people. You'd be so surprised at how many people want to geek out about the things that you want to geek out about. Like people are in this room right now because they have a vested interest, very similar to yours. If we have a React meetup and people are in that room, they're excited about React. And if you're there, more likely, more or less, you might have some interest in React, right? Have conversations with people that want to have a conversation with you. Because the alternative is you're going to cold DM someone that knows nothing about you, that has no vested interest. You don't know where the similarities are. It's harder to open up that conversation than it is in this very room because they want to talk to you. They're literally here because they want to have a conversation. Have it, talk, geek out, make mistakes. This is probably the safest place to do it. What happens if you make a mistake? I'm going to tell you the truth. What happens? You're going to explode. But what I'll tell you, I'm sorry. So you found out this way. All right. What's going to actually happen is they're not going to say anything. They're not going to notice. Worst case scenario, maybe you don't have another conversation with that person for a while. You circle back. Best case scenario, they fall in love with who you are and they want to learn more about you. At the very least, you'll have an engaging conversation. So, like, those are your three worst scenarios or best scenarios, depending on how you look at it. No one's gonna be like, I'm so disgusted that you decided to speak to me, get away from me. Like, that's not gonna happen, right? So I can tell you, and if it does, let Danny know. I'll step in. I'll handle that. No one. This is a very safe place. We purposely make it that way. Degrading or demeaning people, it's not necessarily the goal. So meetups, make those 3-minute conversations. Start thinking, not just now, but maybe when you get home, start like idealizing there's a specific word I want to use because I want to sound smart, but I can't remember what it is. I would say just start brainstorming a little bit on what you could do to have a very successful 3-minute conversation. What could you do? And again, it's not all about you speaking. It's a conversation. You need to find out more about them. Where are your similarities? Where do you relate? Where would this be valuable? And then if you have a great conversation, it doesn't have to end at 3 minutes, keep it going. But if you come to a meetup and you're in a room of, I don't know, 100 people, 200 people, 500 people, whatever it may be, and you only walk out with the same people you walked in with, you've done yourself a disservice. And I'll say this one extra thing. I was at Render ATL, right? One of the biggest conferences in the East Coast. It's massive, it's huge. It's a great event. And I remember in the morning, I'm seeing these junior devs. They follow me online. They get excited. I remember them because they're so active. And I see them in the morning. I'm wishing them luck, giving them a couple good words. And I remember it's like 4 o'clock, and I'm walking in the expo hall talking to vendors and networking of myself. Got to get those connections, got to get some sponsorships and stuff. And I see the same group of 4 people walking together. And I was like, oh, that's great. Let me see how the day has gone for y'all. What have you done? And I'm like, who have you connected with? I said, like, there was a CEO over here that I was introducing juniors to. I was like, you should talk to him. He's hiring some juniors. And they're like, oh, I didn't get any connections today. You spent $1,800 to be at this conference to hang out with the same 4 people. If your goal isn't to get a job, you succeeded. But if the goal is to get a job, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. If your goal is to build a network, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. Like, you're in a room with people that are literally hiring in real time. They're holding ad hoc interviews in real time, and you're still conversing with the same 4 people. I'm glad you feel comfortable, but if you don't push yourself a little bit, nothing will change. And here's one thing I want to dispel this idea for you. Anyone that's learning to code, they say, I've been learning to code for 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. I remember talking to somebody, I've been learning code for 5 years. I've never landed an interview. No one's hiring. The reality is there's no database of everybody learning how to code that employers have. You could be the best developer in the world, and if you don't open your mouth to the right people, they would never know. And so if you're not focused on how you make this path clear, or how you make these connections happen, or you let the world know that you're doing this thing, no opportunity will come your way. And so when you're going through this and you're getting discouraged because no one's hiring you, the question you need to really ask yourself is, how have you marketed yourself to the right people that are making decisions? And if you haven't networked effectively, that could be a reason. If you haven't posted things correctly, that could be a reason. If you're LinkedIn, the only place it says anything about you in a technical capacity is the headline that says software developer or junior developer, and the rest of your profile talks about Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, that's not going to be a conversation that goes your way. So you need to think about how that marketing goes by. All right. Now, this comes a sensitive subject to some people. Projects that are actually worth talking about is the name of this chapter. This is my biggest pet Compete with junior developers. I've looked at probably 10,000 portfolio sites at this point, right? I still don't think people do portfolio sites the right way. I'm going to make a whole video on this, detailing it. I don't think people make portfolio sites the right way because they don't realize or understand the purpose of a portfolio site. They just build it because a YouTuber told them or someone on Twitter told them or LinkedIn. It serves a purpose. It's a tool. But regardless, when it comes to specific projects, I see the same ones: e-commerce website, to-do list application, book library application, something like that. It doesn't really do much. Think about the audience that you're bringing to your portfolio site, your profile. It's a recruiter. It is a corporate recruiter. It is a hiring manager. They are thinking from the mindset of it's not cool that you just learned something. They're thinking of the mindset of how does this add value to a business? How does it de-risk you as an applicant? Because you're a risk at the end of the day, right? Every single junior developer, any company that hires you, they know that for at least 6 months, they're going to lose a ton of money on you. But at the end of 6 months, you're going to be so great at what you do, it's going to offset all the losses. So they're thinking 7 months onward, what are your contributions going to be to the code base? So they need to see some things in you already that ease those concerns. So you need demonstrable ways to prove your abilities in your skill set. So what are some of those demonstrable ways? I remember, for those that don't know, in Dallas, we do a cohort. It's on pause for the conference right now, but it's completely free. We don't ever charge for anything that we do. But we do a cohort where essentially the idea is over the course of 6 weeks, developers, whether junior or not, they have to be past the stage of a beginner, essentially. They work on teams where it's like 6 people, 8 people on the team, being guided by a professional software developer in the industry, building something that's actually worth talking about. That's the key. So you're not going in there building a to-do list. That's not going to happen in our cohort. What were some of the applications that they built? One team built a facial recognition application that would secure a workspace if a wrong user came on, or unlock it if the right user came on. It would log all false attempts in an admin dashboard. That way you could see anybody that tried to access your computer when you were away. Sounds super complicated. The delivery of this definitely sounds way more impressive than probably a lot of the code. Is it easy? Are you gonna get it done in a day? Hell no. It took them 6 to 7 weeks, right? And that was a team, so it's gonna take a little bit of time. But what is this problem? What is this project doing? It's solving a problem. It's delivering a solution, and it's allowing you to talk about that solution in a technical capacity. Nobody's hiring you because you built a project, but it's giving you ammunition in the interview process, in networking and conversations to talk about yourself in a technical capacity to the point where someone piques interest. Because when I said this project, I saw several faces happen. Some raised eyebrows. I got big eyebrows, so I could raise them. Some were like faces of did that happen? And then some faces were like, I don't know where I would start. There's nothing wrong with those feelings. But that's the reason why that project is so powerful to talk about in an interview and a networking opportunity. Another project we built for a mom and pop auto repair store. We built an inventory tracking application that would track the inventory, obviously, in the store. Based on the flow of traffic, it would predict when you would run out of stock on certain items in the store, and it would automatically reorder them from the manufacturer, right? That way, the store never runs out of stock. Obviously, it's a mom and pop shop. They don't have a big warehouse where they can store everything. They're strapped with cash and other expenditures, so that this needs to happen on a regular basis, right? It solves a business use case. It gives someone in a business setting, because think about it, who's in charge of interview number one? It's not the technical manager. It's not going to be the person that has deep level knowledge on coding languages. It's the person in HR. It's the recruiter. They're not technical by nature. So you need to give them something that they can relate to and understand to a certain degree. Of course, they don't know the ins and outs of an auto repair store. They don't need to. But can they understand what the problem is that you're solving and how are you addressing it? And can you talk about it in a technical capacity and a non-technical capacity so that both audiences are interested in what it is that you're talking about? One last project I'll talk about that they built. Now, this was a fan favorite in the cohort. Not necessarily my favorite because it doesn't solve a business use case, but it has relatability. I don't necessarily think I would thrive in an interview with that, but it's still worth building because it's a great project to learn from. It was a recipe generation application that would take the items in your fridge or your pantry. Based on those items, it would generate recipes. But then on top of that, he got excited because he built that one, right? He was in the cohort. So it would on top of that, it would give you all the macros for the recipes. So your fats, your protein, your carbs, sugars, et cetera, et cetera. And if it was missing items from the recipe that were essential, it would generate a shopping list that you could take to the store and get all the necessary items, right? Solves a problem, delivers a solution, allows you to talk about it, and it's a relatable one. There's way more applications, but hopefully it starts getting you thinking in the right terms of how you should be building your applications. I'm gonna speed up a little bit because I know we're running out of time. Uh, so then when it comes to ways to stand out, that's the next chapter, ways to stand out. You need to stand out in this hiring process, right? And so what are some of the ways that you could stand out? What are some of the ways that things that you could be doing? When it comes to standing out, I've often heard whenever I'm talking to somebody like, oh, you don't really have any much going for you in terms of your resume, your LinkedIn. There's no like, where's the meat? And like, oh, there's nothing, I haven't done anything. You are not subject to the terms that you come into this world with, right? Like, however you're born, I grew up in the projects, right? I'm sure everyone has their story, their version of it, but you are not susceptible to live in those circumstances for the rest of your life. You can either say, I'm going to just live here forever, and that's cool. You're making that conscious decision. Or you can go out there and do some things and have that on your resume, right? Volunteer experience, it doesn't expire, it doesn't cost you anything. That's one of the few things in this world that you can do that's a win-win-win. Think about it. When you're volunteering, right, you're helping out your local community. I think that's phenomenal. I'm big on volunteering. I still volunteer to this day, even though I don't need it on my resume. I mean, the hell, this is a form of volunteering as well, if we really think about it. But that experience doesn't expire, right? I can talk about that 5 years from now, 10 years from now. It doesn't expire. The second thing is, kind of like I already alluded to, that experience doesn't expire. I can use that for whatever I need. But number three, think about who else is volunteering. If you volunteer, let's say at the average homeless shelter, you're not talking to people that are homeless that are volunteering. You're talking to other professionals that are giving back to the community. You're talking to people that may be established with this homeless shelter over time, that have been there for a long term, that are part of it, right? What if you were to now come in there after volunteering saying, I saw that y'all didn't really have a website. I could totally come in here and volunteer my time and make you a website. Something simple. And here's the thing, don't complicate this for them, right? There's going to be a time where you no longer volunteer. So don't deliver them a Java application that they can't maintain because they don't know how to code. Maybe their solution is just doing something off of Wix or a Squarespace or something like that, just getting a simple website that solves their problems, or WordPress. That could be the solution that they need. Delivering the right solution is better than over technical solutions that they can't maintain over time. And then you can talk about that. I can tell you right now, one great cohort, online coding bootcamp is 100 Devs. I love Leon Noel. He's like a brother to me, and we talk a lot. And matter of fact, I'm talking with him later on this week. And one thing that they do, part of that cohort, is every beginner, right? You learn how to code for like 6 weeks on that program for free. And every beginner has to get a client in order to progress with the program. I can tell you like 90% of them get a client. So there's clients out there. You can literally pull up an entire list of restaurants in your city and just search which ones have crappy websites, which ones don't have websites. Pull up all the charities. Hey, I'll give back to this charity. Pull up all the CBD stores. Pull up all the vape stores. I guarantee you there are stores that don't have an online presence. And it's 2024. Everybody, especially in the e-commerce solution, you need to have an online presence to a certain degree. Yes, exactly. And the other thing is, for a lot of them, they don't have a technical nature. So you could be the problem solver, showing them solutions that could amplify their business, essentially. One prime example of that, and I'm hoping to do this here. For years, I worked with a program called Give Camp Memphis. And essentially, the idea was every weekend, one weekend a year, every year, we would have all the developers in town basically donate time, and we would make websites for nonprofits, right? It was great because we had senior developers paired with beginners. We had directors of organizations writing code or using WordPress, whatever solution that they needed. And I remember one solution that made a massive impact on a homeless shelter in Memphis, Tennessee, was literally me adding a PayPal donation button on their website. They never had one. And I added it on a Saturday. And on Monday morning, they had almost $1,000 in donation, just in those several days. Because there were people that either went to the homeless shelter and they wanted to donate back because now they're back on their feet, or people that just liked their cause because they had a great mission. That's simple thing. But because they didn't have it, they had a problem that they didn't realize. Boom, solved it, easy. So stuff like that can help you stand out in the long term, especially in this current market. All right. when it comes to, this kind of applies to both LinkedIn and resumes. I'm gonna ask a question, respond for me, please. If I were to tell you somebody's a cashier, what are some of their job roles? Counting money, managing customer service. Yep, bank teller. So why would you put that as the experience part of your resume? Why would you tell me that on your LinkedIn profile that you handled cash, that you rang up customers, you bagged groceries? I know you did that. That's like a barista saying they made coffee. Yeah, I figured that you would, right? So why are you so focused on saying that in your experience section, giving them nothing? You had that job for 3 years. You showed someone somewhere something that you were great at your job and they kept you around, they gave you the raise. What was it? Talk about it. I can tell you right now, if you look at my first resume, I was a fry cook. I said cashier because I thought it was fancier. And I literally wrote on there, created a merchandising selection where I was able to get hot box items paired with gas purchases. So they got a discount. They bought more chicken because of that. We sold way more chicken because of that. That was on my resume. I created a system for maintaining the expiration dates of products and making sure that we're rotating those products. And I talked about that. Those are things that you could talk about. How did you help increase the point of sale purchases by 10% by re-merchandising the counter? Those are things that you can talk about. How you package it, how you talk about it, and how you deliver it is impactful. So when you're a software developer and you say participated in code reviews, I know you did. You don't need to tell them that. Or when you say, oh, fixed bugs, I know you did. Or you say worked on the landing page of the website, that tells them nothing. But now if you were to say created a newsletter sign up sheet, CTA that helped increase customer conversions by 20%, that's impactful. That goes a long way. And then oftentimes when I talk to developers and I'm trying to help them fix their resumes, I say I need some kind of metrics. Because here's the thing, metrics on a resume make your point real. It makes it quantifiable and real. If you say you increase speed on the site, how much did you increase it by? 1%, 10%? If you don't know, how do you know you increased it? Was it a feeling? That's what we need to get down to, the core crux of it. How are you able to support these items? So, and I know I don't have a lot of time, so I'm rushing through a little bit, but you need to be able to quantify the things. You need to be able to talk about the things in a way that makes you stand out, because that's what's going to set you up in the interview process for questions you want to talk about. That's the key. For me, my strategy with my LinkedIn and my resume is, how does it set me up before I'm in the conversation? And how does it set me up for once I'm in the conversation? What does it allow me to talk about? What does it allow me to knock out with a home run every single time? Because if I don't give them enough information, they ask me the cookie cutter questions nobody wants to answer. An interview, which is the next chapter, an interview is a fact-finding mission. When you apply for a role, they're not like, oh, Will applied for this role. Bring the private investigator in here now to find out everything about him. No, they got your resume, they got your LinkedIn. That's it. That's all you gave them. That's what they got. So if you don't over deliver on information in that process, they don't have enough information to develop really interesting questions off that you can thrive with. And if you don't set yourself up for success in that scenario, what happens? If I am in an interview, and let's say this interview is an hour long, and I spend 30 minutes talking about things on my resume, my LinkedIn profile, I spend 15 minutes talking about my technical achievements and things that I've done. That's 45 minutes. That's 3/4 of the interview. I won that interview. There's no way I lost that. And the other part of the interview process is to turn an interrogation into a comfortable conversation. How do you do that? Because that's what an interview is. It's set up that way, even though it's not the intention for a lot of interviewers. It's set up that way. You're already nervous. They probably just drinking coffee. It's a regular day to them, but you're nervous as heck walking in that room or that Zoom call or whatever it may be. And you have them ready to ask you questions, and you don't even know what those questions are. So you're already nervous. You're on high alert. And so what ends up happening is people start running their mouth, answering a question before they even comprehend the question, because they're so intimidated by silence. I'm here to tell you right now, you can pause for a couple seconds, collect your thoughts, and then talk. You don't have to start speaking trying to figure out where the sentence is going halfway through. You can talk, you can pause, right? But the interview, I want them to ask me questions I'm prepared for. I want them to ask me questions about my strengths, because there's only so many times where they're going to be like, hey, so, well, do you know C sharp? No, I don't. I know Java. Oh, well, do you know React? Actually, no, I know Angular. I know a Java Angular stack. They're gonna be like, there's only so many times where they're like, no, no, no. They're like, this person doesn't have anything that we need. But if I've already over delivered on the information on the front end, they know I've got Java. They know I got Angular. They know about the projects that I built, the contributions that I made to the community. For me, getting my first job in tech, I had the hackathon experience. I had meetup experience. I was volunteering at shelters. I was going to all these events. I was hitting the ground running with so much stuff that my resume was just jam packed with things. So they were able to pick each one and make a question off of it every single time. That's what they want. The other thing is your very first interview, a lot of people start thinking about interview number 3 before they think about interview number 1. And they're forgetting the roles of the interviews. A lot of people are going to be filtered out in interview number 1 or if they make it there. So what happens? How does this whole process work? Let me break it down for you so that way it makes perfect sense for you. The role of a recruiter isn't to understand your technical achievements, right? They don't need to know how great you are with AWS or Java. The role of a recruiter essentially is their bus driver. They're trying to grab as many passengers as possible to take them to a destination with the hopes of somebody getting converted, because that is their job role. That is how they monetize these relationships. So some people are like, I can't believe they ghosted me. I'm like, I can't believe they talked to me for as long. You got to think about that. You really do. Like, if they, I spoke to a recruiter from Uber once, and she said on average she's getting 400 to 500 conversations per week. That's 400, 500 new people every week. She ain't got time to find out about your emotions and all that. She's trying to find out, are you the candidate? Do you got the skills? Let's get in the conversation. And so if you're making it easier for them by having a great LinkedIn profile, actively networking, you're beating a lot of the competition there. But if I set myself up for my non-technical conversation, what ends up happening in an interview is they're taking notes. And at the end of that interview, they are making their recommendation, whether they think you should be interviewed or not. Just because they make the recommendation doesn't mean person at interview number 2 takes it. So if you're not giving them compelling enough notes to take, you don't get to interview number 2. That's when they're like, oh, we decided to go in another direction. You didn't get the next interviewer excited about what it is that you're doing, what you're bringing to the conversation at the table. Or you'll hear the dreaded, we were looking for somebody with more experience. I can tell you right now, I'll say 90% of the time. 10%, you got, I can't say the word, you got some bad people. But 90% of the time, honestly, you haven't given them enough to de-risk yourself as a candidate. Interview number 1, they're very high on the risk assessment. They're not taking chances. So if you haven't de-risked yourself, you're not getting through. It doesn't matter if you got 3 years. I know everyone's like, junior dev role says 3 years, the market is oversaturated. I'm telling you right now, the market can be oversaturated, but if you presented yourself the right way, you're getting in. I'm telling you because I see it every single day. And maybe to a certain degree, there's some bias because I get to see all the successes. I see the failures too, but I'm telling you, every single time I see someone fail, it's almost obvious why the interview didn't go well for them or why they're not getting an interview at all. But whenever I see the people that are getting the interviews, they're following the same strategy I'm talking about right now. And it's very obvious why they got the interview. Everyone starts with the same starting point, whether you got a degree or not, whether you got a bootcamp background or not. If you've got the skills, someone will put your name on a paycheck. I guarantee it. But you got to present it the right way. So when it comes to the interview, how am I getting past interview number 1? These are things you need to think about. How do I get someone who is non-technical excited about my technical achievements and explain in a way that they understand? Number 2, how do I get them in a position where they're taking active notes on the things that I'm oversharing? And number 3, how do I get them to qualify themselves to me? I know I need a damn job, but I don't want to work for any company. There was a study that was done, 87% of employers, they said that people that do not ask questions actively in the interview, to them, show a lack of interest in the role, which is ridiculous because I wouldn't be in the room to begin with. I wouldn't be talking to you if I wasn't interested in the role, but that's the way they perceive it. And so for me, my goal is how do I actively turn this from an interrogation to a comfortable conversation? Now, I'm going to give you one of my secret weapon questions. Do not share this because then every employer in the world is going to know, oh, this is Danny's question. But I've never had a bad experience asking this. And in fact, I've had more often than not, people pause and was like, wow, that was a great question. What does success look like to you for this position 6 months from now? The reason why this question is so powerful is they're giving you the roadmap, what they want to see in 6 months. If you get the role, or if you get those little hints and you present that in interview number 2, number 3, number 4, they're giving you the same thing they want to hear, right? What does success look like for you in 6 months from now? And if you hit all those points, if you get the job, guess what? 6 months, you've already achieved everything that you need to achieve. Yearly review time, you're getting the promotion, you're getting the raise, you're getting the job security. Yes. No. I don't like that question, and I'll tell you why. There's a specific reason why I don't like that question. You've already devalued yourself as a candidate because you're saying you're not where I need you to be, and now you need to raise yourself up. Instead, I want them feeling like I'm just perfect for this interview, and especially in today's market, there's just so many people to choose from. I don't need anyone to devalue me as a candidate compared to another one. Especially if they're interviewing 20, 30, 40 people, I want them thinking I'm the perfect fit out the gate. And so for me, oftentimes I'll even end the interview with what do I need to do on my side to keep the ball rolling in the right direction? That's often a question I'll go in the interview. But the other thing too is I'm actively asking questions back and forth to where if they say something, if they question me on it, I may turn that question back around on them. Like, how does this work in your environment? What are some of the problems that you're trying to solve right now? Why is this position even open? Like, did you get rid of the guy? Did he leave? Did you just open it? Like, is this adding to the team? Did you lay off a bunch of folks? I want to know this stuff. So oftentimes, they'll have their little spiel or whatever. But often by the end of the interview, they'll always ask me the same thing. Do you have any questions for me? I was like, past all the ones we've already asked? And they're like, you did ask a lot of questions. They remind themselves like, man, he really did ask a lot of questions. That's the whole purpose of the strategy. So now, obviously, they're going to be taking active notes. You end up in interview number two, the technical interviews. That's where your technical skills from chapter number one still pays off. All right. Got a few more minutes, so I'm going to rush through this part. When to apply to jobs? That's a big one. Does anybody know when you should start applying to jobs? Right away? Yesterday? That's damn right. For those online, he said the best time to apply to a job is when you already have a job, so you're not worried about bills. I definitely agree with that one. Uh, having done your research, I'd definitely like that one. My answer is a little different, but it revolves around a lot of the answers that we just heard. Uh, if you know the core competencies of the languages and the demand of your area, and you match at least, at a minimum, 50% of the job ad, that is time for you to start applying to that role. You'll never match 100%, and if you do, you don't belong there. So if you match 50%, time to get in that conversation. As well, if you're a junior dev trying to get your first job in tech, any role that doesn't say senior, that's open for conversations at that point. I don't care if they say mid. I've seen mid roles get downgraded to junior level. I've seen internships get upgraded. So you can go either way on that one. But make sure you're putting yourself in a position that you're easing their concerns. Because if you get in that conversation and they start talking to you and they're like, this person's wasting my time, that's not going to go the direction that you want it to go. So make sure you're actually reading the job descriptions. Mass spray and pray, meaning you just have one resume and you mass apply, it doesn't work. I've seen 1,000 times. One conversation we actually had in the Discord not too long ago, we had somebody, he actually used to come to the meetups for a while. He told me he applied to 2,000 jobs in 3 months. And I was like, there's no way that you customize your resume off of that. And he's like, I don't have time for that. I was like, you're right. Like it's time consuming. But do you have time for 3 months to go by and 2,000 applications to go by with 0 phone calls? Or do you have time to start customizing those resumes? Maybe you apply to 200 jobs and you get a couple phone calls. He's like, Dan, it's not going to work. I said, I'm telling you right now, if you do this, it's going to work. 3 weeks later, he had a job in tech. He had the skills. He had the abilities. He had an amazing background. He just didn't know how to describe it in certain ways. And that resume, he just sprayed and prayed. It doesn't match enough for the job descriptions to pop up higher in the ATS results. For those that don't understand ATS, ATS is the applicant tracking software. And essentially, based on certain metrics, it will rank resumes, right? Now, humans going to go through it, right? They're going to reject it or whatever it may be. I just know humans. And I know if 1,000 people applied for this role, resumes 1, 10, 100 are going to have a lot more enthusiasm from the recruiter than resumes 880, 950, etc. Right? So I want to end up higher on that list. And so if you, damn it. So I want to end up higher on that list. And so if they're talking about testing in that job description, and my resume mentions nothing about that specific testing thing, how am I going to end up higher? They have concerns about that developer being able to test, and I'm not answering that concern. But over here, he is. he's got a better chance of ending up in that conversation than I do. Follower count doesn't get you in the interview. Everything that you put on there does. The number of likes you get on a tweet or a LinkedIn post isn't opening that door for you. The reputation and authenticity that you bring does. So think about that when you're going in there. All right. Next chapter. Yeah. This is a good one. I don't even know, dude. I'm skipping some. But I've only got like two left because we don't have time. This one is really important. The main reason why I bring this up specifically is in the last 8 months, I've seen more people actually get kicked out of roles that they were doing well in the interview process for that I've ever seen in the previous 3-4 years. Employers, especially now, because it's an employer's market. In software development, it's never been an employer's market before. It's always been a developer's market. This is why a lot of developers are struggling right now, because what ended up happening, they looked at it and they were like, if I just coughed and that cough sounded like the word JavaScript, I was in an interview. Well, now there's a surplus of developers, right? So what ended up happening? They get to pick and choose. And this is the first time where developers are like, I don't know how to advocate for my skill set or stand out in this interview process. They never had to do it before. That's why a lot of this rhetoric is employers aren't hiring. They are, but you need to kind of put yourself in this, because if we be real, every other industry before tech, they've always had to advocate for their skill set, whether it's accounting, lawyers, you name it, they had to advocate for it. Tech was in this area where they never had to. They never had to say, like, I'm great at this, I've done this. If you know how to code, you were in there. Well, now you got to advocate for that skill set. And one thing that needs to be advocated for is your leadership abilities outside of your job role. This is the first time I've actually had conversations with recruiters, with hiring managers, with directors of orgs, where they're saying, I can't find people that would take ownership of the role because they're not showing me that skill. I've never had to have that on resumes before, but now they're actively looking for it. Especially, I'm not saying technical people, they know technical things, right? We're talking about the other side of the hiring process, the interview number 1 individuals, or maybe interview number 4 individuals. You need to be able to showcase leadership skills outside of your job role. So I've been telling people on their resumes, even create like a leadership and achievement section where you can put things like, I participated in this hackathon and I led a team. I got this award for this and la da da da. Whatever it is that you've got to talk about, throw that in there. And one prime example of that is somebody I helped with her resume, and she said this helped her get this job. She got an upper management position because of this. She threw in that when she was in college, she was the president of a student association. I won't say this student association because I don't want to pinpoint her out. She didn't give me necessarily permission to talk about this public. Well, I didn't ask, but I want to respect her permission there. But she was a student association. She was president of a student association. That led her in the interview process to talk about what it is that she did, and that did well for her. So have something there in that capacity that showcases your leadership outside of that role. Yes. They want people in their in the rhetoric that I've heard over and over again. They want people that can take ownership of their role. And so if you're showing leadership attributes already, you're more likely to be a leader on the team as opposed to someone who's very passive or laid back and not taking initiative. Again, I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just saying this is what I've heard in conversations over and over and over again. Yes, sir. I mean, there's ways that you, so I'll say this, anything on your resume should be something that you can talk about, right? So whatever you put on there, whether I'm not going to tell you to manufacture stuff that didn't happen, but if it didn't happen, go make it happen. Like simple as that. Like this entire world exists with opportunities where you can give back in somewhere. And again, volunteering could be a lead thing here, right? Led a soup kitchen line. Boom. That's on the resume, leadership attribute. Or how you worked on a team at a hackathon and you were able to lead them to XYZ results. That's a way to showcase it. Or worked with a team of devs that you met at a meetup and you built an application. Boom. That's a way to showcase it. There's so many ways to do it. So I wouldn't be just bogged down with the idea like, dang, I need to lead a team. There's ways that you can kind of present that. Or you got an award for something. That's another one that does really well. All right. I forgot what chapter. I just read and forgot all about it. Okay. So we've kind of covered a lot of the core things that I think, again, networking, valuable, do it, right? So now I want to get into one extra thing here. So instead of just telling you how to get the job, what do you do after you get the job? So you landed the job, now what? Right? That's kind of where I'm leading with this. In my opinion, there's something that you need to be doing and thinking about within the first 6 months of your role that will basically help you solidify your role. Because I've always said, if you work in tech for under a year, it's a job. Once you hit that year mark, you've just made this your career. That needs to be the goal now. How do I make this my career? So there's four things here. I'm going to tell you the four things. I'm going to explain the four things. Code base, processes, team, value. Code bases, process, team, value. What does this mean? Within the first 6 months, follow the rabbit hole, learn that code base. No one's expecting you to memorize the entire code base line by line. Some code bases, millions of lines of code. It's not going to happen. But if we're in team meetings, you should be able to articulate and understand what's going on when we're talking about certain processes. So if we're like, hey, the sign up form on the sign up page is not working, you should be able to be like, oh, it's in this component here, the sign up component, which is connected to this, and it's passing through the middleware to go here and sending information to the database through an API. All that needs to be conceptualized so you can try and help the team figure out and pinpoint how long is it going to take to repair, fix, et cetera, et cetera. So you got to learn that code base. Following the rabbit hole is a great way to do that. That pseudo code to documentation that I explained earlier is also a great technique for that. But as you progress, you're going to get way better at it, right? Everything comes through repetition. Number two, processes. Now, I'm not just talking about processes in your code base. You need to know those. Like you need to know what processes you're utilizing, how you're getting things from A to B, et cetera, et cetera. But what I mean is before tech, I had never worked in corporate environment. Reality is I never saw the inside of an office, right? Except in movies. And so I didn't know how to relate to a lot of the processes that they use. If you're in a similar situation, or maybe you've never worked in corporate America before, learning those processes and what those people do in relation to your role, but also agile processes. Like I remember my first team meeting, my manager said, we t-shirt size these tickets. And so he explains the ticket and he says, before anybody answers, Danny, what do you think this ticket is going to be? Like, I don't double XL? Like, what are we talking about? For those that don't know, the way you size a ticket, it's like a numerical value of like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, which represents complexity and time that you're going to spend on that ticket. I'm not going to go through that now. But regardless, I didn't know what that meant. So you need to learn those processes and how you can adapt to those processes. That way you're an active participant. Especially early on in your role for 6 months, you want to be very active in communicating things because the reality is you're not going to know a lot. I don't care how great of a self-taught developer you are, there's going to be a bulk of information and tools that you've never had access to before that you're going to need to learn. Like I didn't have a clue what CI/CD pipelines were and Jenkins builds. None of that ever came to me before working in tech. And more than likely it didn't come to a lot of you because there's not too many tutorials on stuff. So you're going to be exposed to a lot of things that you don't know. That's going to be stuff that you need to figure out and how you relate to that and how you utilize that. When you're a junior developer, actively speak. If you're stuck on a problem for more than an hour, you need to talk about it because the reality is if you go into that stand-up meeting in the next morning and they gave you a task that should have been done by the end of the day and you're still talking about how you're not progressing, that's not a favorable conversation to be in. But the other thing is also work on how you describe your task. So if you come to a stand-up meeting, and I'll use an example that I've had before, I had a junior developer come in and he had a problem that he was using an API, wasn't getting information correctly, and it wasn't processing it correctly, or it wasn't showcasing on the front end correctly. And I said, well, did you try checking out the documentation for this? Yeah, I did that. It didn't work. I was like, okay, well, did you check to see if this endpoint is correct? No, yeah, that didn't work. I was like, okay, well, there's only so many damn times where I'm like, you know what, man, you better figure this out. Like, I don't know what to tell you. But now, if you went into that stand-up meeting saying, hey, I'm still working on this ticket. I tried ABC, that didn't yield favorable results. I tried DEF, that also didn't work. I'm currently working on GHI, and I don't know if that should be the direction I take. I'm open to all opinions and ideas, or if you can direct me to something that would help me out with it. That is a favorable meeting, conversation, and topic for you in that stand-up. And what's going to happen is after that stand-up meeting, they're going to send you a link to XYZ. They're going to pair program. Something's going to happen where you progress past that, right? And you won't look bad in front of management. That's a big thing. Especially early on in your role, they're looking for reasons to get rid of you. So don't give it to them. Actively speak. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the strategy that I use with a lot of my interns and juniors is write it out, throw it away, write it out again. Because oftentimes your first write out is very nervous, but it allows you to start thinking, and that second write out is more concise. Then start thinking in the mindset of, if I knew nothing about what it is that you're asking me, how will I understand it? Then progress. Yes. Yeah. So for those online, he said he was in a problem where a developer told him he was asking too many questions. That could definitely be the case, right? Like if you keep breaking up their workload, it's tough, right? So my my often approach is you need to spend a little time working on it before you come to me with it, right? But then if you repeatedly come to me with similar problems and can't figure that out, it means you weren't honoring the time that I gave you in order to explain this to you. If I'm giving you time, that means you're in the perfect situation to ask whatever you want. But if every 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, you're coming to me, I can't get my work done. Like your mentors or your whoever it is that is your go-to person in the company, they're given the task to help you out, but they're not given the task to work on your tickets with you. They still have their responsibilities to handle. So you need to honor both. So it's like if I give you time and make time for you, you need to ask whatever you can within that time period as much as you can. So that means sometimes often researching your problems and taking notes actively, like I need to ask this, I need to ask this, I need to ask. And then in that hour session, 30 minutes, whatever it may be, we're digging into everything that you need to be successful. But if every hour you come back, that means you're not doing your due diligence in your work. All right. So from processes, we have team. You need to learn your team dynamic. You need to learn who your go-to person is in the organization. But you also need to learn what the roles have in relation to you. So for example, I didn't know what a product owner was. I didn't know what a product manager was. I didn't know what a scrum master was. I didn't know what a TPM was. I didn't know any of that. You need to figure out what those roles do in relation to you. But also you need to figure out how, to a certain degree, how your manager relates to you, how your director relates to you, et cetera, et cetera. Also, set up meetings and skip level meetings. And we'll go into that. And the last one is value. The way that, so for me, when I got my first job in tech, I was promoted within 3 months and I was promoted at 6 months, which is not typical, but I was doing certain things that helped me out with that. Not typical though. One of the things that I did was I did the point of value. You need to understand what the value is of your team to the company and what your value is to the consumers. Because 99% of the time, you're going to be working with a company that sells something to somebody, right? Whether it's to the open public, whether it's to other vendors, other clients, maybe it's B2B, B2C, you don't know. You're selling something to somebody. Money's changing hands somewhere, right? What is your team's value to that organization, to that or that product? I've notoriously worked on e-commerce, sales funnels, basically the time you land on the website to the point of checkout, point of purchase, we run that whole show, right? And I worked at my first company called Front Door, which did like uh, insurance warranties for like appliances. So not your house itself, but the actual appliances in there, fridge, whatever. If it broke, you called us, we fix it, whatever. It was kind of interesting-ish, I guess, but not really. But the whole purpose here was I remember going through that sales funnel through the mindset of I'm a customer, I don't know what they do. And I remembered at the point of purchase where I'm supposed to enter my credit card information, I was like, dang, I don't even know what I'm buying. I don't know what's covered. And their assumption at that time was you get all the details after you make your purchase. I'm like, that's a terrible process. And so after I created a report presentation, I presented it. My director loved it, the suggestions that I made, and we ended up going with that. And 3 months in, I was able to get my promotion and actually lead that initiative because they thought I had enough experience to do it. I did it. It was successful. We saw a huge conversion rate. We saw 11% decrease in abandoned cart purchases. For those that don't know, in e-commerce, I think the statistic is 92% of the time, if a cart is abandoned, that customer never returns. So that's 11% reduction in those abandoned carts. It's a very significant deal for e-commerce solutions. So they're very ecstatic about that, which led to a bonus. And which, I mean, let's be real, the bonus wasn't much, but I was excited about it. And, it's corporate, it is what it is. But I was still excited about it, right? Your first job in tech, 2 promotions. I felt like I was the hottest thing walking at that time. And, but that value really kicked in. And so the last thing we'll cover, it's twofold. One is a brag book and the other is one-on-ones. Your brag book. People don't do this. I don't know why. I'm very big on this. Every single Friday, you need to imagine a scenario that your director came to you is like, you know what, Danny, what have you done all week? You need to have an answer for that question. You can't just say like, I was writing code. That's not going to be significant. And the reason why I say this is whenever it comes to your yearly reviews, when it comes to your one-on-ones, they're going to want to know what your contributions are. What have you been doing? If you have this book by that yearly review time, you've got every single point you need for your review right there. You're not scrambling. Because I remember almost every company I've worked at, all the developers, when review time comes, for 2 weeks, their work is out the window because they're trying to figure out what they did. They're doing all their pull requests and looking at all their code for the year. And they're trying to figure out where they made an impact, what metrics were there to support it, et cetera, et cetera. Having that brag book will be significant. When I'm at team meetings where they're like, hey, team, that feature you pushed out 6 weeks ago, we got proof it was a success. I'm like, great, LinkedIn's open. I'm adding all that shit to my experience. We saw a 30% increase in customers. Cool. We saw $3 million in new trend. Cool. All that's going on there. But then guess what? When that yearly review time comes, I'm copying, pasting, dropping. I'm done in 10 minutes. Everybody else is spending 2 weeks not being able to contribute code or anything else. So I'm going to stand out in that time as well. The other thing is with that brag book, how do you approach your one-on-ones? If you are not doing one-on-ones, you're doing yourself a massive disservice. I actually demand them. Even in my current role now, I'm a direct report to my CEO, and I still demand one-on-ones. And the reason why is your manager, your director, your CEO, whoever it may be, they're having a lot of conversations throughout the week. If you see some of their schedules, it's ridiculous, right? That's why I never want to be in upper management. Now look, like today I had 5 hours of meetings back to back. Like it's just nuts, right? It's hard for them to keep track of what every single developer on their team is doing. So if you're using your one-on-one as the tool that it is, you're actively reminding them of your contributions without giving status updates. I refuse to talk about anything in my one-on-one that could be talked about in a stand-up meeting because this is my time now. It's not company time. It's time. How do I progress in my role? How do I progress as a software developer? How do I rise up and thrive? I need that information. Don't gatekeep it for me because you want to find out about XYZ. Set up another meeting for that. This is me. And so I always treat my one-on-ones that way. What can I do in my time right now to set myself up and learn whatever it is that I need? And so oftentimes in a one-on-one, you'll get action items, right? Hey, can you do this, this, this? I'm like, cool. I keep a living Google Doc or Microsoft Word doc, if you use Teams, between me and my manager. At the end of that one-on-one, whatever action items are there, I make a checkbox and I write that one-on-one, or that action item. Then in 2 weeks, because I usually do my one-on-ones every 2 weeks, whatever your cadence is, that's up to you. But it's non-negotiable. It has to happen for me. I like 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, I'll be like, hey, before we start, can we go over the action items? And so like, hey, did you do this? Boom, I did. Can you check it off? Hey, I did this. Can you check that off? And then by the end of the year, they have an entire document of things they've personally checked off. So they know that you've been making contributions. They know you've been active. They know that you've been doing the things that you did. It's hard for them not to fight for you and advocate for you when it comes to awards, promotions, raises, et cetera, et cetera. That's often prime example at AutoZone. I didn't have the highest title on our team, but I was the highest paid on our team. My team lead had less pay and more hours and more work. And I don't say that to brag, but I say that because everything that I did set me up for that. Every organization move that I made set me up for those higher rates of pay. And that one-on-one is a very large tool to that. It's also the reason why when I left AutoZone, they placed me on an automatic rehire list, but also the director advocated for me trying to beat my current he couldn't. But he tried and he took it upon himself. Normally, a director's like, just tell a manager, hey, go figure it out. If they go, whatever. They were advocating, they were fighting because who else on our team has that track record within the organization that showcases that? So if you walk away with anything, please, I hope you took a lot of notes. I saw some people doing that. Hopefully you got a lot of action items. The last thing that I'll say, I hope I helped in some way or another. If I have, I appreciate that. If I haven't, I did my job too. You got exactly what you needed out of this, whether it was good, bad, or ugly. Hopefully it was good. The last thing that I'll say is, it's okay, especially if you're a junior dev trying to get your first job in tech. I like to end these talks with this remembrance. I'll tell you right now, I sabotaged my entry into tech for years, for a long time, to be completely honest with you. I didn't think I was allowed to be in the industry. I was intimidated by it. I would go to meetups, right? So I fried chicken at the gas station. I worked seriously ridiculous schedules, and I would take off of work just to go to these meetups because I knew something was there. And jokingly, they would call me Popeyes because within 10 minutes, the entire room smelled like fried chicken. I mean, wearing my work clothes, I smelled exactly like it. I only had enough time literally to just go from work there. And I played it off, but the reality was it hurt to hear that. Mainly because I'm reminded again that I'm not on an equal playing field with the people in these rooms. They work in offices and they got degrees and they got all this going for them. They're wearing suits and they're wearing polos, and I'm here wearing a gas station t-shirt that says Pops Express on it. Like I'm not on the same plane. I'm Popeye. And I remember I would psych myself out every time I was having a conversation with them. I go to the interview and it was like instantly, even on the drive to the interview, my mom would be like, Danny, what are you doing there? Get away from here. You don't belong here. Just turn back around, go home. And I'd be in the interview office and I'm sitting there and my mind is screaming like, Danny, they could smell you. You got chicken in this room. They know you're not adequate to be here. And I'm so glad I didn't listen to my doubts, my insecurities, my nervousness. because I'm Danny Thompson and I am now a director of technology at this dot labs, previously software engineer, and I'm doing exactly what I want to do, helping the people I want to help, and I'm thriving in an industry that allows me to be a part of it. I can't wait to call you a coworker. Thank you.